You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Today on our Total Wellness Tuesday show, we're going to be talking about the 5 foods that can cause anxiety and insomnia. So this was a great article. Again, you probably heard me mention in the past, but I love to read about psychology. I probably read about psychology more than I do even about health now. And that's only because after, let's say, about 20 years of reading health-related books and research and articles and all that, of course, I still keep up with it every single week. But I love to look into the psychology of getting people to change, meaning that if I know exactly what needs to be done when someone comes into my practice in order to help them, whether they have an autoimmune-based issue, a digestive issue, skin-based issue, let's say they have Hashimoto's or Lyme disease or whatever it is. Like, we have protocols that absolutely do work. Again, all wellness, all weight loss, all anti-aging. What we look at is the deep underlying root causes of why someone has not yet achieved their goals. And we know we've done this before. I've done the research. I've gone to all the seminars. I've worked with the greatest of the best of the greatest. And I know what they've used. I've tweaked it for, again, I just have the good fortune of being able to work with a huge team. Like, I work with a great team inside of our 2 different practices. We see over 20,000 appointments per year. I have over 200,000 appointments of data. I've fine-tuned even the best of the things that I've read to make sure that it works for the greatest majority of people. So now what I have to do is I just have to find new and innovative ways to get people this information. Kind of, that's one thing the podcast does, but I also have to get them to say, okay, I'm ready now to take control of my life. I'm ready now to lose the weight, to get well, and to live longer and live a better quality of life. So that's why I love studying psychology, and I read a lot of books on psychology, and I was actually reading through Psychology Today, and I like to give credit where credit is due. So I was reading an article by Dr. Georgia Eddy, or Ed. I feel like I can't pronounce names correctly because there's different pronunciations and all those different things. And I should know better, especially with the first name Stephen with a PH. Nobody knows how to pronounce that for whatever reason. Once they don't see the V in there, it just becomes very, very confusing. And then Cabral, forget about it. So, but I do want to give her credit. It's a great article. What I want to do is I want to share with you. She absolutely hit the nail on the head. So really clear, concise. I'm going to go through those 5 foods right now that absolutely do and can cause anxiety in certain people's, as well as insomnia. But I also then want to add just a few extras that I've just seen in my practice, especially with children. So if you have kids, younger people as well, they might not be doing some of the things that we're going to talk about right now. Well, they very well could be using these other 4 substances, and I'll chat about those just real quick at the end. All right. So let's get into the first one. The first one is caffeine. So why would caffeine give people anxiety? Well, when you think about it, what is caffeine doing? It's what I call whipping that tired horse, right? It will make you get up and go, especially people, if you look at genetics. So again, I run a great genetic test. You can just find it right on the website under the store. Again, I used I'd say a dozen, and this is number 1, without a doubt. It's 100 pages long, and then you get like a 3-page or 7-page cheat sheet from me, understanding your genetics. Well, some people have slow oxidizers of caffeine, and some people have fast metabolizers of caffeine. And so what happens is, what caffeine does is it ramps up your stress levels. That's how it gives you energy. It starts to produce more adrenaline. What it does is it blocks the sleep-promoting adenosine receptors in the brain, so you're not going to be able to fall asleep. And a big part of it is, too, you have to understand, is that it has a half-life of about 5 to 6 hours. So that means about half the caffeine is still in your blood and being metabolized over, after you drink it, and after it's done, that hour's passed, over that 5 to 6 hours, even if you don't fully feel it. So what that can do, though, is that can really ramp up your nervous system. It actually makes some people shake. Some people get panic attacks, or it's just the accumulation every day using caffeine that can become an issue. So I have a great caffeine withdrawal protocol. I will share that with you in the future. And I'm making a little note myself. If you heard that little pen click, caffeine withdrawal protocol. I will share that with you. And it works great because, again, using the psychology, I help people wean off without them feeling like they're weaning off. And the great thing is, too, you don't get those terrible headaches from caffeine withdrawal because, again, it is a real drug and you are really withdrawing. Okay, so the second one is nightshades. Now, this is one that a lot of people wouldn't guess, but nightshades are in tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, peppers, and one that a lot of people don't know about, and that's goji berries. Now, there are others out there. So people go back and forth about ashwagandha, whether it's a nightshade or not. You have to understand that all these foods that can be good for us are not good for some people, right? I mean, that's hopefully what you're learning too from the Cabral concept is that we're not all equal in how we react to foods, how we react to life, how we react to fats. Some people do better on a low carb diet. Some people do better on a high carb diet. Again, that goes back to genetics. That goes back to your body type. But nightshades are a little different. I can tell you this though, if you are more prone to autoimmune based issues, you're going to have to be a lot more careful with any type of pepper, and that goes for cayenne, that goes for, paprika, and again, like the tomatoes and the bell peppers and the chilies and all that great stuff. Those are real issues. And even potatoes, like if you're eating potato chips or a potato starch in a gluten-free recipe, what happens is the chemicals inside these nightshades actually block the enzyme acetylcholine esterase. So any esterase, whenever you see that, it's basically like an enzyme, and acetylcholine is an actual neurotransmitter. Really important acetylcholine used for everything from kind of focus and brain stimulation, all these things. But what happens is when you're eating these nightshades, it doesn't allow for the degradation of that, which means it accumulates, hangs around in the blood. And what we're talking about, whenever we talk about anxiety, we're talking about it kind of like amping up or ramping up the nervous system, which doesn't allow you to relax. And then when you can't relax, obviously you can't sleep, right? You can't relax. And that's going to lead to potentially panic attacks as well. So really important that you look at that. Alcohol. Most people think that alcohol calms them down. And they'll say, you know what? That's absolutely true for the most part. It does calm people down. It relaxes them. It puts them in a better mood. But what they don't understand is that it creates a vicious cycle. So that vicious cycle actually then affects them the next day. So they drink the alcohol. They're feeling good. They're feeling relaxed. They go to bed. But the problem is they don't get into those deep levels of sleep because their body is trying to really just detoxify all this ethyl alcohol. And that's a huge issue. And what happens is when your liver is working all that detoxification and it's in your blood, you don't get that deep relaxation-based sleep. So you don't get that deep restorative-based sleep. And a lot of people, it leads to the lower blood sugar that next morning. And that can, again, lead to all sorts of anxiety and dysregulation of cortisol and all those things in your body. Again, remember, your body loves rhythms. I've spoken about this on a previous Cabral concept. And if you haven't listened to that one before, man, I wish I could find the one right in front of me, but just look back to the MM shows. Just go to stephencabral.com/podcasts, and that will really show you how to create those rhythms in your life. I believe it's just so ultimately important that we master that because everything just becomes so much easier. All right, number 4 on our list is aged foods. Now, again, why would aged foods? What are you talking about, aged foods? Aged foods would be like salami and pepperoni, and it would be cheeses, and it would be red wine. It would be all these fermented vegetables that we talk about, even apple cider vinegar. So all these fermented-based foods, all these aged-based foods, well, what's the issue with those? The issue with those is histamines. And histamines is something you probably heard me talk about before. It's not talked about enough. Histamines do wild things inside your body, like create massive inflammation, create massive excitivity, turn on the immune system, really get the immune system imbalanced as well. Meaning you have this rush of Th2-based, immune-based response, allergies, asthma, all sorts of issues like that, like the chronic-based issues. And then you have an imbalance with actually fighting off all of the good stuff, meaning you need your immune system when you get a normal cold. But what happens is it's not worried about this acute-based issue, it's worried about these chronic-based issues with these histamines. So a lot of people, when they drink the red wine, when they immediately start to get a headache, or they immediately start to get acid reflux or burning in their stomach. Other people might get hives. They might get redness of the chest. Some people might just have massive brain fog the next day. And it is these histamines. Now, Can we do a better job at this? So it's the mast cells and the histamines and the mastocytosis, all these things. I've been through all this my own life. You can absolutely do a better job and then eventually be able to have some of these foods like I've been able to do. And how does that work? Well, it helps with cleaning up your gut, because when you're looking at a specific enzyme called diamine oxidase, which actually degrades and breaks down histamines, that is what helps in the long run, is kind of clearing up and cleaning up that gut, and then lowering your total histamine load as well, which I'll make a note. I'll talk about that in the future too, because again, it's not given enough credit. And that's why for people who have real histamine-based issues, having a red wine or having champagne will just really give them a headache or really cause them to have anxiety or cause them to have big issues, especially that next day. And again, that's a problem. Okay, number five. Number five is your sugars and your refined carbs. Why would that be an issue? Why would that cause anxiety? Now, this is big with kids too. Really, really important. Well, it throws off your blood sugar. And so when you have these refined sugars, meaning like processed foods, anything kind of ground out into a flour, yes, it does absolutely change your mood, because it changes your mood by giving you a high in sugar and then drop you down really low, leading to irritability, lethargy, fatigue, poor concentration, all these things, of course, that we don't want, right? And again, it's more harmful for children as well. So you get this spike of adrenaline, this spike of stress, this, high on sugar, and then you get that crash as well. And that adrenaline rush, that does absolutely set you up for panic attacks, anxiety, and of course, poor sleep, especially if you're eating like dessert or those types of things before bed. So in the long run, that could lead to type 2 diabetes. That could lead to all sorts of issues. But I want you to know, why did I bring up this show today before I get to my 4 bonus ones right now? The reason I brought it up is because there's always an answer why. That's the bottom line, is you don't need anxiety medication. You don't need all these antidepressants. You don't need all of these things. Now, could you use them in the short term? Absolutely. I'm not saying that at all, because I don't want you to suffer. I don't want you to have any issues. I'm not that type of, sadistic type person where I'm like, oh, well, until you get better, you're just going to have to suffer through this. No, if you're already on a medication, you don't just stop it. You work a plan to get better. And then when the symptoms are gone, you wean off the medication. And you can do that with a practitioner like myself. You can do it with a functional medicine practitioner who's a naturopathic doctor as well. I mean, I think really that's the best of both worlds if you can find that. Naturopath plus functional medicine. It's just like you get the state-of-the-art lab testing with the functional medicine, and then you get the natural healing, hopefully from the root cause, which is what we're talking about today. And just look at that. We just talked about 5 foods that cause anxiety, that cause panic attacks, that cause insomnia. And that was just 5. And remember, if we're just talking about that, we can absolutely figure out, especially too, if you have mineral imbalances, like what about magnesium to calcium? What about sodium to potassium? We didn't even talk about that. So anyway, there's so much that goes into it, and you absolutely can figure out what's wrong with you. That's the bottom line. Now, I want to give you 4 more. So 4 more that weren't mentioned in the article. And again, this is no fault of the writer of this article. It's just you can't write an entire book when it comes to an article. So anyway, a couple other things is that I see so many kids like myself who used to be on Benadryl, and then they were on allergy meds like Zyrtec, Allegra, and nasal sprays and Flonase and Nasacort and all these different things. You're just basically pumping hormones in your body all day long. And it's tough for kids because it stunts growth. It also messes with your mood. It messes with your mind, messes with your concentration, because you're literally giving essentially a shot of cortisone steroid. So what I mean by that is there's anabolic steroids and there's catabolic-based steroids. And when you give something that's a precursor to adrenaline, like or say something like norepinephrine or epinephrine, you then start to spike and stimulate those adrenal glands. So that's certainly going to set you up for absolute anxiety-based issues. And I took Benadryl for like 5 years straight, like 2 caps every single night. And then I would take Sudafed every day when I woke up, plus Claritin D. I mean, I was an absolute mess. And I can't believe really that they allow that type of medication for children. But anyway, I digress. So the other thing, besides those allergy meds and the asthma inhalers, which is just pure, basically adrenaline, pure epinephrine, is food dyes. So again, anything with unnatural food dyes, check those labels. All of the reds, yellows, and blue dyes and things, they can cause and have been shown and correlated with learning disabilities in kids, with ADD, with ADHD. And the same goes for adults. A lot of times they're more pronounced in children because children are smaller. They're 5 times less weight, really than adults. So when you look at that, it's just a much, much greater effect. Plus their livers and their bodies aren't able to detoxify in the same exact way. And I want to give you one more to look into. I thought this was really important, is artificial sweeteners will drive your nervous system crazy. Not just MSG. other artificial sweeteners as well. And I did a whole show in this. So please tune back. Please check out previous episodes if you haven't heard them, because everything kind of builds off others as well. StephenCabral.com/284. Best and worst sweeteners. So that's not just for weight loss. It's also talking about like, how are they for your body as well? Nothing's ever just about weight loss. Wednesday's shows are never just about losing weight. It's also about health, because that's how you truly lose the weight and keep it off, is get healthy. So absolutely check out those as well. So that was my show for today, is looking that anxiety is not surface level. It's not just genetic. Yes, you could say I come from a long line of anxious people. No doubt about it. That's absolutely the case in my family. And I dealt with insomnia, and I dealt with anxiety, and I dealt with, strange panic-based issues. And again, once I cleaned up my body, once I got rid of all these medications too, and I really started from a clean slate, it didn't happen overnight. Now there aren't those issues. Like I just don't have any of that racing heart rate, nervousness, any of those things. It just doesn't happen. And again, I didn't change as a person. I changed physiologically. I'm still the same person, but my physiology began to change. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that gives you kind of like an insight again into, how I practice, how I look at medicine, how I look at life is really just keep going deeper and deeper, asking why. And if you keep asking why enough, you will absolutely figure out what you need to do to get to your goals. Thank you once again, everyone, for tuning into another Cabral Concept.
Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp hearts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to StephenCabral.com/resources.